Hey guys, I'm Simulator Tech, and today I'll be building the Neo70, an FRL layout keyboard from qwertykeys. They recently released the Neo65, which was really good, so I'm pretty excited for this one. Also, I'm super excited since this board will be sold on rolling in-stock releases that ship every 4 weeks instead of a single group buy that takes a lot longer, so it's a lot more accessible for purchase. Inside the carrying case, there's a lot of accessories. In the big pouch, we have a bag with PE and plate foam, as well as the main PCB. There's a few different variants of the PCB, but mine is the wired hot swap version. It has all the necessities like south-facing sockets, support for screw and stabs, via support, and cutouts for the gaskets. Next up we have our polycarbonate plate with 2 separate pieces. I'll get to that in a second. I also requested an aluminum plate because I want to see how it sounds in different configurations. In this bag we have some black and beige case feet and some screws for the PCB and plate. This keyboard supports 2 mounting styles, including O-ring mount and PCB mounted silicone gaskets that attach to the PCB. Under we have the magnetic badge that covers the bottom of the case, so you can easily remove the PCB assembly. In this bag we have some more foams, but this time it's for the secondary PCB, which includes the arrow and navigation keys. It has the same features as the main PCB, but I don't believe it supports O-ring mounting. I also found that the sound on this side is a little bit weaker since it's separate and small, but it's not a huge issue. In the main compartment, there's a keycap and switch puller, a simple black braided cable, and a little screwdriver, and some clip-in stabs which are really good, though I did end up over-lubing them just a little bit. Finally, of course, we have the case, which has some foam inside. I received a unit in red, which is really pretty. It's a bright red, and the texture is slightly rough, but fairly consistent. There's also some sparkle to the finish, which isn't my favorite, but it's not the worst. Overall, the design is fairly simple with very little to disassemble. But one unique thing about the case is that there's 2 separate sections for each PCB. Since both mounting styles for the board are drop-in mounts, qwertykeys utilized a magnetically attached cover on the right side. I think this is a really smart way to retain the bezel on the right side while keeping the design simple, but it looks a little bit strange with the lines. My unit came with a dusk weight, which is really pretty. I love how the colors reflect off of the weight, and the lack of branding is nice. The build process for this board is super simple. All you have to do is install the stabs, I've lubed mine with dielectric grease, and throw your switches onto the plate and PCB. Then install your gaskets and throw the PCBs into the case. Since the board uses a MagSafe kind of connector from the PCB to the daughter board, there's not even any wires in the case. Once the cover for the right side is on, just throw on your keycaps and you're good to go. I'm using some red Cyrillic keycaps from JC Studio, which are nice thick dye-sub PBT. Alright, I have 4 different sound tests for you guys with both the polycarbonate and aluminum plates. Let's take a listen. This board sounds phenomenal. Of course, the polycarbonate configurations with all the foams sound very poppy and foamy, and the configurations with aluminum and no foam sound very clean and clacky. I also like that the Neo white switches I use in this build are really smooth stock and have a pretty poppy and deep sound signature, which helped rein in the clack of the aluminum plate build. I also noticed that the gummy O-ring makes the sound a little deeper and introduces more of the case in the sound. I believe the gaskets provide the PCB and plate more effective isolation from the case, which makes the sound a little bit cleaner and higher pitched, though it's pretty minor, so I'm not sure how well it translated in the sound test. Overall, I love the way the board sounds. In terms of feel, this board is not the softest typing experience. On average, I found that the gasket configurations had more give than the O-ring configurations, so that's something to keep in mind. Visually, I really like this board. The design is simple, with a nice side profile, and a cool rear with the weight and badge. However, the one part I don't like as much is the magnetic cover for the secondary PCB. The functionality is great, especially if you're playing around with the configuration a lot, but the brake lines slightly take away from the look. Of course, that's just my opinion, so if you like it, then that's great. My favorite part of the keyboard is that the overall build experience is super friendly and convenient. To remove the PCB assembly, all you have to do is remove the rear badge and push the PCB out. As I stated before, there's no wires inside the case, but rather there's this magnetic connection from the PCB to the daughter board, which honestly is like the coolest thing ever. It makes building that much more beginner friendly, and surprisingly, I didn't find the feel or sound were affected. Overall, I think this keyboard is pretty darn good. The price starts at $100 for the cheapest configuration and can go up to around $155 for the most expensive, which if you think about it is the same, if not cheaper than the starting prices of the Zoom 65, QK65, and Jira 65. And honestly, this keyboard beats all three of those in terms of sound, since it can sound really good both with and without foam. That's not to say any of those three boards are bad, since I think they all have their own advantages over this board, whether that be looks, quality, or whatnot. But if I had to choose now, I would take this one in a heartbeat. Now this may sound great and all, but why this keyboard rather than the Neo65 that qwertykeys released rather recently? I can think of two significant differences that would sway you either direction, other than the layout of course. The first thing is the convenient and beginner-friendly build experience. With the Neo65, you have to remove the rear weight in order to access a ribbon cable so that you can detach the PCB from the daughter board. In this board, however, you can literally just drop the assembly in the case and it just works. Especially considering that this board primarily targets a fairly beginner audience, the more streamlined build experience is a pretty big plus. Unfortunately, that upside comes at a cost. Yeah, literally the cost. The other difference is its starting price being $20 higher than the starting price for the Neo65, which isn't a ton, especially considering the starting price includes a plate when the Neo65's doesn't, but it's something to keep in mind when deciding between this and the 65. It's also worth noting that the shipping will probably cost around $30, which raises the price. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. If you want to get more information on this board, I'll have links in the description. Thank you for watching, and thank you qwertykeys for sending out the board and switches. See you guys later. Bye!